things went your way. That's why I think getting into Oxford, which was all Robert Bolt's doing, really made my life. Because I wasn't born to a world where these things would have happened anyway. You know, some people are in that kind of world, aren't they, where they know people. But I wasn't at all. Brought up in Devon, mainly, with parents who hadn't been to university. So I think Oxford did it. And there was a girl I knew who knew the editor of the ITN News. And she said to him, well, I think this Jenny Izod would be okay as the woman reporter. And so he said, well, what's she like then? Well, she went to Oxford, says this other girl. And so he thought, well, that's all right then. And he just chatted to me for a bit. And I got the job, whereas now I presume they audition dozens of girls, I should think, to be a woman reporter on the news, and there was only one. World in Action had a great ethos. Yeah, quite party-loving, and Tim Hewitt was very badly behaved. I mean, he was so rude, and nobody minded. He'd call me you with the tits every time he saw me. Hey, hey, come here, you with the tits. And another girl, such a very good researcher, had a wooden leg. And he used to call her Hopalong. I mean, who would dare do that today? I mean, you couldn't, could you? So he was outrageous. He was Australian and he was allowed to get away with it, and was a brilliant editor. But you don't get that sort of guy today. You know, larger than life, crude, marvellous journalist. We were doing a film about the 1960s. I think that was the subject, the essence of the 60s. And Jean Shrimpton and Dick Fontaine was producing it. And he went and filmed a lot of Jean Shrimpton footage and David Bailey in New York and lovely stuff. Brought it back, Cannes, and with the Maysel brothers. And the Maysel brothers shot everything that moved. Do you remember? They were the first handheld observational cameramen. And so they shot an awful lot of footage. Cannes came back to the World in Action cutting room. Piles of them. And Dick, it was just too much. You know, I can imagine if you're the one who shot it all and, you know, you're responsible for it, he just couldn't really cope with it. It was just too much. And I remember him sitting with his head in his hands. And Alex said, would you just take over, please, Jenny? So, I mean, Dick went on to great things later. I don't want to suggest he didn't, but that particular film, I don't blame him, faced with the Maysel brothers footage. So I took over and finished the film. And for that, I was made a producer, I think. I was asked to do a film, or did a film, about Mandy Rice Davis, and it's never been shown. It must be still sitting there in the Granada archives. It was too close to the bone and too, I don't know, with the sub judice, but she was quite rude about Lord Denning, and you remember she had a reputation for being quite pert. And one of the most emotional things...
They would say that, didn't
they? They would, yeah. I'll never forget this because it's, to me, it's all about the effect of the camera in producing honesty, which you know it does, as you know well. And Mandy had never really had to be honest. She just sailed through life and she was pretty and said what she wanted to say. And everything went fine. And we were filming her at home with her mother and father, and her mother was like she was, being social and charming and saying, yes, of course you can film us having our high tea, and we were in Solihull in their home. And the father just sat silent. He minded terribly about what had happened to Mandy. He hated it. And he'd never, ever been able to say so because it was too awful. And he couldn't stand up to Mandy anyway. And suddenly, the lights, the camera produced this moment, I'll always remember it, with that man suddenly saying what he had to say. And the two women were chatting away nicely. And he said, I just want to say, Mandy, that you have no idea what it's like for one's beloved daughter to be all over the press as if she's just a harlot. Have you any idea how hurtful it is to go out and see the neighbours looking at you and sniggering behind your back? I'll never forget that. Maddie didn't know how to take it. She said, "Don't be silly, Dad, don't be silly." But she couldn't stop him. And one of them entirely built around Mrs. Thatcher in number 10. And I saw her at such close quarters. And I really felt for her as a fellow woman, trying to cope with a son who was lost in Africa, a daughter trying to make her way in a job, a secretary whose daughter was taking exams and needed to have a card sent to her, whatever it was. She was very nice like that. The Sultan coming to dinner that night in number 10. Where was his silver salver? She must put it there because he'd be pleased. All these things, as well as disarmament, relations with Reagan. And through the whole thing, by the way, I spotted she was quite taken with Helmut Schmidt. And every time he phoned, she'd go sort of pink and a bit of a flutter. And it was so sweet. So I think there was a little sort of feeling between them. So I was seeing her very much as another woman. I think the turning point came when Mrs. Thatcher had said there must be a quarter of the BBC's output must come from independence. And George and I, as two senior producers in the department, were invited by Will to go to BAFTA, sit on the stage and answer questions about what sort of thing we felt we wanted from independence. We, BBC, wanted from independence. And I was then the BBC One, head of BBC One documentaries. And we both had the same idea. We looked down at the audience of independence and we thought, we shouldn't be up here, we should be down there. That's where they're having the fun. And there weren't that many of them then. And it was after that meeting we both thought we ought to join that side of things. And went off to see a bank manager to try and get, to start a company. And it was great.